Greetings, everybody. Mike Wilkerson here for the Fangbanger Podcast True Blood Transfusion, our video-only fan feedback segment featuring you. I'm with
David Curry.
And we just finished our review of True Blood's Season 5, Episode 1...
Turn
to the third power. What did you guys think about it? Make sure you tell us what you think, and we'll use your feedback on our next episode of the Fangbanger Podcast, as well as inside of our True Blood Transfusion. David, let's get straight to a little bit of housekeeping that we need to talk about. The first thing is that the Two Guys Talking Podcast Network has a great new sponsor in Streetscape Magazine. It's also Streetscape Television, which not only has a great ton of shows and articles featuring our local area here in the St. Louis area, but it's also got the Interpreter Toolbox podcast, which is a great segment that I pioneered a couple of years ago that this television effort has now taken on that will soon be featured on our local ABC affiliate, which is incredibly exciting. So make sure you look for information about that, but also thanks to our new sponsor, Streetscape Magazine and Streetscape TV. The second thing, we have some new podcasts on the network since we last spoke to you last year, September, when we finished out the True Blood season. We've got some great new podcasts. The first one is the Two Guys Talking Poker podcast. For those of you that are poker addicts or even just casual fans of poker, make sure that you check out twoguystalkingpoker.com, where host Vic Porcelli and Andy Kazin provide you with not only some great, super in-depth interviews with some of the world champion poker players, they also provide you with some great hand analysis, but also some life lessons. A lot of people ask me, are you a poker player? And I'm not. I don't know anything about poker except maybe some of the movies that I've seen. But there's a lot of life decisions involved inside of the processes inside of poker as well. And so make sure you check that out. It's twoguystalkingpoker.com. The second one, of course, is there's a complete archive of Streetscape TV, which are half-an-hour episodes featuring great businesses here in the St. Louis area. But again, also the episodes of the Interpreter Toolbox podcast appear inside of all of those. The Interpreter Toolbox provides you with not only great business stories, but also some vocabulary and sign language learnings that David could definitely take a piece of.
I absolutely could.
As could all of you, probably. So check that out. Remember, you can check that out at the Two Guys Talking Podcast Network at twoguystalking.com. The last thing that we're going to talk about is the Feedback Gauntlet Contest. David, last year we got some really great input and push from offering people cash.
Money. Skrilla. Oh, wait. In sign language?
Money.
Money.
Money. Cash. Dinero. Cheese. The cheddar. Anyway, when we ask people to tell us what you think, and we kind of get people to provide us input sometimes. A little bit. Well, now we're going to give you cash to do it. $100 cash, that is. So remember to go to twoguystalking.com/gauntlet, and you'll see what you've got to do. It's nothing tawdry. You get to just click some stuff and participate in our contact form, and we enter you for a drawing for $100 cash at the end of this True Blood season, which is when? When is that?
September? No, couldn't possibly be.
Not quite that long. Anyway, at the end of this True Blood season, we're going to make a drawing for $100, along with some other prizes. I think we'll get from August. Then we're going to get some from some of our other sponsors. So we'll be giving away a bunch of stuff, and all you've got to do is run through the Two Guys Talking Gauntlet of feedback. So it's time to get into this episode of the True Blood Transfusion from Two Guys Talking. First thing we're going to talk about is True Blood news. Holy recap hell.
Yeah.
Something we talked about in depth last year is that the Fangbanger podcast and the True Blood Transfusion have nothing to do with recap shows at all, ever.
Right. We
will never recap the episode blow by blow of what goes on inside the episodes, either in the Fangbanger podcast or here at the Transfusion. And the reason? You now have, according to my count, 11 different recap blogs.
That's ridiculous. And I looked at a couple of them, and the idea of not getting a succinct review, these are my opinions on these certain things, which is sort of what we do with the Fangbanger podcast, but literally camera fades in, Sookie is holding Tara, all the way through to the very end, blow by blow, everything that happened. I don't need that. I just watched the show.
Yeah. Not only do I not need that, why is someone being paid to write that?
Yeah.
Let us know what you think of that. Send your feedback on the feedback about the 11 now recap blogs that you can read that mostly suck. The ones that don't suck, we actually link to over at the Fangbanger podcast website at
FangbangerPodcast.com.
FangbangerPodcast.com. And remember, you can listen to our entire review of the first episode of Season 5 by clicking the link right above us here inside of the Fangbanger Podcast website, or via the links down below if you're at the YouTube channel for Two Guys Talking. All right, so fan feedback. Liz is the first person that wrote, you guys were talking last season about how you like the format of True Blood and other shows on premium networks and how they play out. Yes, no doubt about it.
I agree.
I believe that a large number of other people are fed up with the major networks and their wayward attention to what fans want. Yes.
Yes, we agree.
I don't know that they act on it, though. I really don't.
Well, I would
really
say occasionally.
I vote maybe on that. I think that there's enough programs that we've seen, the last 5 years since the writer's strike?
Yeah.
That disappear for no apparent reason except that it's time for them to disappear.
Yeah.
And that's really frustrating as a television viewer. We're going to get more into that, too, about being a television viewer and the perspective of a television viewer. It's another piece of feedback. We'll get into that in depth on. Liz continues, they all switch to repeats and stall new episodes of shows when big things like the Tony Awards come on. The Final Four or other large events show on one network, leaving those of us who don't care about any of those events or shows, or about other shows or events, to actually wait a week.
Yeah. Unfortunately, those are the things that make network television their money. The contract with the NFL, contract with the NBA, the contract with the Olympics.
Right.
NBC, anybody who likes NBC shows, get ready for nothing but Olympics for, 4 weeks, 6 weeks?
Copious, not only we get that, you'll also get copious advertisements for the Olympics. And don't get me wrong, I love me some, especially Summer Olympics. They're fun.
Like the Olympics, yeah.
And I love it because it really does push and burgeon the edge of technology inside of the television realm, as well as the internet realm. Because you really do see a lot of good things happen with what happens inside the technology inside the Olympics. It's usually groundbreaking time. They pull out all the stops and give you some really great new stuff. But you're absolutely right. They just kind of throw everyone else inside the television spectrum under the bus. And that's why I'm gathering what Liz writes here is that you do have options via the premium networks and continual options. David just got done talking about inside the Fangbanger podcast that you get done with Game of Thrones, right into True Blood.
Right into True Blood.
No waiting, no nothing. And waiting didn't suck nearly as much this season.
This season as it did last year. Absolutely
right,
not.
Yeah.
And we can pimp HBO Go right now, as a matter of fact.
Absolutely.
That's a perfect opportunity to catch up on something you may have missed or dive into something you haven't seen.
Yeah.
Not just that, the other network, the other subscription programs, Hulu, Netflix. There is tons. You're on demand. And we watched. We caught up on Weeds. We caught up on a show that I don't remember the name of right now. But
it was a great show.
It was a great show.
It was awesome. It was on the premium networks. It was called
Shameless. It was Shameless. We caught up on Shameless.
Shameless plug for Shameless.
And, ignore the network. They're ignoring you. Go right ahead and ignore them.
Yeah, I think the only thing that I would throw in as a negative for HBO Go is that it's not available on the Android platform yet. Now, thankfully, we have an iPad 2 at home now, thanks to our Sorensen network people. Thank you very much, Sorensen. And we've got HBO Go on that, but it's not available on the Android platform yet. So there's your nudge, HBO for that. Liz, thanks so much for your input. We look forward to more from you here on the True Blood Transfusion. More True Blood news. Joe Manganiello talked about researching playing a werewolf. And now, you and I both know how stupid it can get often with actors and they're researching the craft and that. Now, I totally have to admit that I went in expecting stupidity when I read the article. But it wasn't. It was good. He actually went and didn't interact with them, but went and watched real wolves and did some of the research on how wolves interact, and that's all fine. And like when they growl and things like that. And so it actually is not a bad article that we'll link via our Facebook presence over at the Fangbanger Podcast. You go to Facebook, type in Fangbanger Podcast, will come up. Click on that, and you'll be able to read the complete article about Joe Manganiello researching and being a werewolf. Are there other roles that have been researched by actors that you can think of?
Oh, I'm sure. Absolutely everything. When somebody goes and they get a role as a serial killer, they go and they read the litany of copious amounts of data on serial killers. It's a little harder to research a fictional being, but when it's sort of tied to a certain reality or a certain type of behavior, i.e. wolves, makes it a little bit easier, I think.
Yeah, I agree with that. And there's also some animal interaction stuff inside the Pixar movies when they're trying to make characters and stuff. That's also really, really good about how they research how they move and act and then incorporate that into some of the animation that they do. Great stuff. Make sure you check it out at the Fangbanger Podcast over on Facebook. Our next piece of fan feedback is from some dude named Mike. I've never met him before, but here's Mike's input. One of the value points of great television is being able to weave true, valued characters, and then shut up, and then often seeing the value of making them die, go away, or sleep with the fishes. Another value trait is having some focus. True Blood, in its first 57 minutes of episode 1 of season 5, showcased that it can't do either. Now, for those of you that are wondering, yes, I crafted this wonderfully written comment set. But it's not because I wanted to sit and read my own words here on the True Blood Transfusion. It's because I'm trying to make a point. My point is that inside of this episode, there are two things that really bothered me. The first is that they didn't have, except for the two scenes we talked about in the Fangbanger podcast, any semblance of keep the camera in as seen for more than maybe 15 or 20 seconds. That really bothers me. I am not attention deficit disordered. And I'm assuming you're not either.
No, not really.
Not really. Okay. And so everyone that watches a television show doesn't have to be moving every single instant of every single scene or zooming in or flashing to one or flashing to another. We can actually take even that 2-shot inside of television and we don't die or melt like a vampire. None of that. Really. It's true.
I agree.
It's true. The second thing is, can we heap on more characters?
Yeah.
Is it possible? And of course, the answer inside of True Blood this season is absolutely. We're going to heap on some more characters. The problem is that you still only have 50x minutes to try and tell the story that only lasts 12 episodes inside of at least this season that you hope eventually is going to come to conclusion with some of those story sets.
Sure. Well, we talked about this in the Fangbanger podcast, so listen to it right above us, that they have a problem now with their first episodes where they try and tie up the loose ends from their cliffhangers, which we enjoy, and front load the season because they only have 12 episodes. So the first episode has to do double duty. It has to be 2 episodes essentially, which makes it cramped and confusing. Hopefully it spools out across the next 11 episodes in a way that we enjoy.
Yeah. The other thing that really comes to the forefront is I don't mind if the season detracts or gets negative, mostly because it makes for a more fun reviewing environment, to be absolutely honest. There was some feedback that we got to this comment that I wanted to also share with you. First one up is Myler. Myler writes, totally agree with this comment, my comment. The show has lost all coherence in characters, all their credibility, sex, and blood. Its go-to devices are getting really cheap, and there's no real story or development to back them up. Comments?
Yeah, I don't really agree with that.
You don't agree with that?
No, I think there's story. I think there's character development. We talked about how Jessica's character has blossomed. Even in this, the few vignettes she was in this particular episode, we enjoyed what she did and where her character is going. I think Jason's character has developed a great deal. So character development, no, there's absolutely character development. There's just 2 of many instances of that. As far as likable characters and these strong and available kind of acting and performances, we go to Pam as another perfect example, and I think that Eric and Bill are still viable in the show.
The problem is that the viable characters were sadly totally lack of representation inside this episode.
Well, they once again,
and obviously what Myler is referring to is I don't know, brother sister humping in the evening inside of the storage container on the dock of the bay.
We've got you on the negative.
Dock of the bay, check. Yes, definitely negative. Okay. In response to that, Chris writes, I agree with, if you don't like it, don't watch it. What was that, David?
If you don't like the show, don't watch it, Mike.
Chris continues, it's just that simple. No point in really wasting time to rant and complain about it. You people crack me up. Find something better to do. That being said, this season is starting out better than the last season, in my opinion. I'm curious to see if Tara's going to have a grudge against Sookie and Lafayette for wanting her turned into a vampire. She looked awfully pissed off at the end of the episode. One thing that kind of threw me off was the whole Wolfpack story. WTF. David?
Yeah, we were right there with you. I think maybe it's going to be a little too much werewolf politicking. the entrail eating. We discussed that in the Fangbanger podcast.
Yeah. Well, and it's a really good segment. Make sure that you check that out by clicking the links right above us to the Fangbanger podcast. Episode 1 review of season 5.
And as far as not watching it goes, we can't not watch the show at this point because no, it's not just a podcast, and we do enjoy doing the podcast, but we're invested in this. We're invested in these characters. We've already invested for including this one 49 hours of our lives in watching this show. If I've only watched it I've seen some episodes more than once. So at least 49 hours of my life have been invested in watching the show. So I can't just not watch the show. That's not an option at this point.
Right. Not only is that not an option, but it's one of the overarching goals inside of Two Guys Talking Dumb in general, across all of the reviews that I've ever either participated in or made or just edited for Two Guys Talking, is that what Chris doesn't understand yet is that the investment into watching a television program, especially one as serialized and specialized as, say, True Blood or any of the other things that Two Guys Talking has ever bothered to make, well, it's an investment.
Right.
As sure as it's cash in your hand, handing it to somebody, I am giving my cash to the people that create a program. And so I demand to be satisfied. I don't think that there's anything strange about that.
Sure.
Great piece of writing in, Chris. Thanks so much. Appreciate that. And so what do you guys think about episode 1, season 5 of True Blood, Turn to the Third Power? We're wondering what you think. Go to our website over at fangbangerpodcast.com. Click on the contact button, fill out the quick web form, and really dig down deep and give us some meaty substance to what you think about either this episode, the other episodes that you've seen, or maybe even last season, digging something out of there, hoping it's going to push through this season, over at fangbangerpodcast.com. Until next time, I'm Mike Wilkerson, one of your hosts.
And I'm David Creed, your other host.
Be sure to listen to the Fangbanger Podcast over at fangbangerpodcast.com. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.
Are you going to press stop?
You press stop. I'll sit here and smile.